So XCloud or Xbox Cloud Streaming in 2022, whichever you prefer to call it, it's Microsoft's attempt at bypassing needing a dedicated console or PC in order to play games, and instead allows gamers to stream to devices such as iPhones, iPads, and Android devices, plus giving players access to a ton of games with Xbox Game Pass. But how does it stack up in the real world? It sounds like magic on paper, but internet access varies greatly between countries and places within those countries. Is Xbox Cloud Streaming a viable alternative to a dedicated piece of kit? The short answer is no. It will be some time before this sort of technology matures enough for serious gamers where they wouldn't want to buy a dedicated piece of hardware. But just how good is the service? And is it worth it for more casual or not so serious gamers? To test that out, I've streamed games to my iPhone, iPad, and even to the Xbox Series X itself via a wired connection. Plus tried it out over 2 different internet connection speed plans, plus over 4G as well. I'll be using the Xbox Elite Controller 2 via Bluetooth on the iPad and Xbox Series X, and the backbone controller when playing on the iPhone. I'll be discussing image quality, performance, and input latency as well. As I mentioned before, if you want the best experience possible, then play on dedicated hardware, as at times Xbox Cloud Streaming did annoy the shit out of me while playing. But I certainly had some great times with it too. You know the feeling you get when videos buffer and you just want to destroy everything in sight due to frustration? It doesn't reach that level of first world tragedy, and I did keep playing various games, as when it worked, it was good, but there are definite problems. And when it wasn't good, it could be bloody awful. So here you'll see the iPhone and iPad footage blown up, if you're watching this on a TV of course, so you can compare just what the differences are between playing this way or playing on a console or PC itself. But please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment, and join the Discord. But let's take a look at how close cloud streaming in its beta form can get to the console experience of gaming on an Xbox Series X or PC. Let's do it. So let's kick off with playing some games, and with the service now powered by the Xbox Series X hardware, cloud streaming offers games at 1080p and up to 60 frames a second. We start with handheld mode via an iPhone. I tested out multiple games such as Dirt 5, Destiny 2, which is no longer available unfortunately, Battlefield 4, Halo, Gears 5, Dragon Age Inquisition, Doom Eternal, etc. And overall, the streaming experience varied. As I said before, I use the backbone controller with the iPhone, so it plugs into the device directly, so there is no Bluetooth input required, which would hopefully improve input latency. Playing first-person shooters this way, and granted, I'm not a big fan of playing these sorts of games where aiming is important on a handheld device, but even with that, input latency was high enough to make me want to tear my hair out at times. Over 4G, it was even worse, making playing games such as Destiny 2 or Doom Eternal, where the experience became more about fighting, actually trying to play and control the damn game itself, than anything that the enemies were doing to me on screen. Once I hooked it back up to Wi-Fi over a 50 megabits a second connection, the experience improved slightly, but it was still noticeable. After that, I then hooked up to a gigabit internet connection over Wi-Fi, and now I was almost sitting on top of the router to get the absolute maximum quality connection I could get, apart from strapping the box to my head. Once again, input latency improved slightly, and we are talking in milliseconds here, but this isn't how I would want to play at all. I came to the conclusion that first-person shooter games via cloud streaming and on the small screen such as an iPhone, even with the controller plugged in to minimize latency, was not a good experience. Next up, I went to racing games, another genre that players need precision, and thankfully, this was a better experience overall. But in saying that, it was the difference of being punched in the face or getting it slapped instead. Less painful, but you still got hit. There was definitely some more latency when playing via the handheld, but it was more manageable when compared to the shooters. I'd need to adjust to this slightly, knowing that I didn't have the same sort of control when playing on my Series X or any console really, but it felt decent. But whilst playing Dirt 5, and this was for the first time, this is where I experienced a huge drop in the frame rate, and the game started to chug for around 10 seconds or more, or the whole screen would just freeze, like Thanos was standing behind me and decided to click his goddamn fingers. It was running fine, then taking this huge performance hit. And this happened in several games, including Forza Horizon 5. This is unacceptable, as my connection wasn't the issue, but it would mean the difference between winning and losing or being killed. And the amount of the stutter could see you go from first in a race to last. And now you're facing backwards and driving into the railing. This sort of performance drop means you shouldn't be playing any of these games in multiplayer, that's for sure. But even when playing single player, there are definite issues that need to be addressed and improved. These technical issues and the less than great input problems made me see the huge reality bomb that was dropping on XCloud gaming at the moment. It could be great for certain games 80 to 90% of the time, but then it could turn into a big pile of shit the next moment. These problems were lessened with a better internet connection and having a more stable Wi-Fi connection as well, but they were still present. Games such as Dragon Age Inquisition or Battlefield 4 just had a large amount of input latency, making playing the games really not enjoyable. So plenty of time streaming on the iPhone, I decided to check out the experience on the iPad, but now playing with the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller via Bluetooth, and this overall was a better experience than when playing on the phone. The controller itself is so comfortable, and I play with all 4 paddles as well, so I felt straight away that I had more control when playing. The latency was still present in games such as Dragon Age, Battlefield 4, Destiny 2 or Halo, but the controller itself helped make playing just feel better, but it definitely was nowhere near perfect. Racing games definitely felt more precise. I still had some times where the frame rate would chug or the game would freeze. Those issues persisted across all devices and platforms, but this was my preferred way of playing, even if the controller was hooked up via Bluetooth and had an effect on controller latency. Of course, I also preferred this way due to the increase in screen size of the iPad too. Playing on the phone was fine, similar to a Nintendo Switch, especially if I played outside and didn't have access to the iPad. Plus, I don't lug my Xbox controller around with me wherever I go. One thing I will mention though is that no matter if I was on the phone or iPad, when loading up a game, it would sometimes hang on the menu screen, even if I was pressing the button to move to the next screen. This could last up to 30 seconds at times when the game would finally begin, either finally loading or moving to the next screen. Not a huge deal, but another issue that needs to be addressed is I had no idea if the game was even registering my button presses. And then we get to test out cloud gaming from the Xbox Series X console itself. And if you for some reason want to take the most powerful console out there and relegate your experience to something that's a bit shit, then this is for you. So when on Game Pass, you can see if the game allows cloud streaming by looking for the small cloud icon on the game art. Click that and you'll have the choice to install the game if on console or PC, or play it via the cloud. Just note that if you have the game installed already, the cloud symbol won't show. If you uninstall the game from the internal or any external storage, then the cloud icon will reappear. Installing the game is always better from a performance and gameplay perspective, but playing via the cloud, even when on the console or PC, to see if you like the game before you download it, is a great idea for those on slower internet connections or who have data limits. But now let's talk about the image quality when using Xbox Cloud streaming, and then I'll do some side-by-side comparisons where you can see just how well or poorly the phone and iPad image quality is, and that of cloud gaming on Series X as well. How it stacks up against running the games natively on the Xbox Series X with the game stream captured at 4K 60. And just to reiterate, we are comparing a 1080p streamed image with often an 84K image running natively. It's purely for comparison's sake. So when we compare resolutions, of course, it's lower, and there is no getting around that, but it certainly holds up on the phone and iPad side of things, partly due to the smaller screen size, which can hide or mask imperfections in the image quality. Overall, the image looked fairly good, especially on the iPad. It just looked sharper, and this will vary somewhat depending on the device you're using, but the detail was at an acceptable level most of the time. Some aliasing and shimmering were present, but less noticeable due to the screen size. Colors looked very good most of the time also, but the biggest issue apart from performance at times was the artifacting, where you could see the image somewhat break up or become pixelated, especially if you looked at the sky. The pixelation issue would present itself quite a few times over all games, but it was somewhat improved since I used cloud streaming last year. This issue occurred on both the phone and iPad, and when it comes to problems with the service, I can deal with this as long as it isn't too much of a breakup. I'm not wanting this image to look like I'm watching some 240p piece of shit videos from the 90s that I'm watching on Real Player. As long as it doesn't become too bad, then I'm okay with it, and that goes for if the service needs to drop the image resolution down as a means to have performance stay consistent, especially if there are unforeseen stress points in the network Wi-Fi or the internet access. When we look at cloud streaming via the Series X or other Xbox consoles and then playing it on a TV, if you're used to what the game is meant to look like, then you'll think someone smothered your shiny TV in Vaseline, as the image can look so blurry you may think there's a Nintendo 64 hooked up to your TV. Now, of course I'm exaggerating with that, nothing can possibly look that blurry, but the image does have a washed out look about it, and the texture quality takes a significant hit when compared to running the game natively. Comparing shots side by side, it's obvious just how crisp and detailed the textures are when running on dedicated hardware. There's going to be trade-offs, but these sorts of trade-offs become less important the smaller screen size you're playing on, and if it keeps performance consistent, then that's very important too. And this is where we need to raise the question of who cloud gaming is ultimately for. Using this on a phone is the most obvious, as it's the most portable, and with many games offering on-screen controls, this is the easiest and most convenient way to use the service. All games really need to have touch controls though, but the standard phone screen sizes can be a bit small for some games, and what connection you have when using the service will be a huge consideration with whether it's even worth using Xbox Cloud Gaming. Tablet size screens are better of course and offer larger displays, giving you a more console or PC-like gaming experience, but you'll be needing a proper controller for this, which makes it less portable, but an overall better way to play the games. As someone with a Nintendo Switch and not a huge fan of their first-party offerings much these days, if I'm after a more handheld gaming session and want to play proper games, not some mobile microtransaction-filled piece of crap, then I've been using XCloud way more than the Switch. Sure, the service has some issues, but it's also offering so many games to enjoy on it for a low monthly cost. But playing on the Switch, for example, also reminds me how dated the hardware is and has been for what I'm wanting to play and how I want to play those games. There are the low resolutions and frame rate, similar to the performance issues in xCloud, which offers higher frame rates, but with the issues that come with the service such as frame drops and freezes, which hopefully become less and less frequent as the cloud gaming matures. Getting access to so many games is already fantastic value with Game Pass, but if you're mostly a multiplayer gamer, then cloud gaming as it is now will probably have you throwing your controller in frustration more than any kills or wins you get. The way it performs is just nowhere near what it needs to be if it is to become a viable alternative to dedicated hardware. Once more apps become available for more devices such as smart TVs and the service matures, then I can see many people signing up to play games this way, as the barrier to entry is extremely low. If you can tolerate the performance and visual problems, then it's best to try out the service yourself and see how it runs on the connection you have. It will be interesting to see how it all plays out in the years ahead. So there's a look at xCloud or Xbox Cloud Gaming as it is now, but what do you think of the service if you've tried it? Or is it something you see yourself using a lot? Please let me know down in the comments, give the video a thumbs up and to share, subscribe to the channel and stop by the Discord, and I'll see you on the next video.